it is still technically May. It is the 23rd of May. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. What do you think? Here's my first question for you.
Okay.
People say this about like Black History Month, for example, and they say, why is it just got to be 1 month? You know, we should be thinking about this all the time.
Okay.
And I mean, I agree with that. It shouldn't have to like set time aside to all of a sudden be doing things differently or doing, you know, special things only for 30, 31 days. I should say 28 to 31 days, depending on the month. But do you buy into that whole thing? Like if someone says, hey, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, do you argue that every month should be Mental Health Awareness Month?
Yeah. I feel the same way about like a lot of different things. Like you can even say like we have one day a year where we celebrate loving our partner, like, or loving people in general. Like that's kind of weird. You should just, you know, always do that. Like, right. And I feel that way about like mental health. Like I think especially with what we've all been through this past year, I think we've all gotten some sort of taste of what like mental health issues are, like what it's like to be in that world. So I think we should take care of each other every month.
I agree. It should be, yeah, it shouldn't have to all of a sudden be like calling it out, saying, hey, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. It especially in the last year, should be something we're always thinking about.
Yeah.
Like, and should be, we shouldn't have to just set aside May to give special attention to it. It should be all the time.
Yeah.
And this past year especially, really, it's been a real test of mental health and how people handle this stuff. About a year-ish ago, I don't remember if this was before or after the George Floyd stuff started, because that was just the icing on the cake. When you have a pandemic going on and everything's locked down and on fire, and then all of a sudden that happened, just one thing after another. And we did a whole episode of this podcast, you, me, and Ak, where we talked about mental health.
Yeah.
For a good portion of the episode. And I know you really enjoyed that.
I did. It actually helped me a lot because we talked about it before I had gotten any sort of medication. Because I was kind of reserved about getting medication, because I was like, oh, we'll do this, whatever reason you have for not getting medicated, it's,
right.
It's not really important, but the point is I didn't want it. And then we talked about it and I was like, you know what? It's not that bad. So then I got some help and it was great.
And I'm glad you did.
Me too. I
really
appreciate you being able to talk about it the way that you did, and you were able to share them and break the stigma.
Yeah.
So to speak. So that's why I love talking about it.
And it was a tough time for me, especially last year, because as we revealed during episode 500 of this podcast, which you can hear at hardlyfocused.com, you'd have to listen to the whole podcast to hear this, because we talked about it in our wrap-up segment.
Yeah.
But Kate and I jointly announced at the end of episode 500 that we separated, which actually, there's inner circle of people that knew, but that was the first time that we really publicly announced it. And there were actually people that reached out to me after that episode, listeners and friends who actually heard it and were like, holy shit. Like they were shocked. Like they didn't, they had a feeling just because of social media, they knew something was up, but they didn't realize. And, Kate and I also been together for 15 years. So, but that all happened last summer, and that was part of the reason why we did that episode, because it was coming off the heels of me having this horrific panic attack that was fueled partly by that. And, I wanted to get that off my chest, and it was just going through a lot back then in the pandemic. And then the George Floyd stuff just didn't help.
Yeah.
So, but it's been a year. Obviously the things, these horrible things that have happened, we're past them. Mm-hmm. Pandemic's almost, pandemic's we're in a better spot now as a country than we were a year ago. There's a lot more You know, things are still, there's still a lot of tension out there, but people are at least, you know, there's a lot more discussions happening and people are a lot more cognizant about issues. You know, personally, Kate and I have been working through our separation. So, so on that note, it's been almost a year. How do you feel, Nate, since we last had that discussion?
I feel a lot different. It's hard to say like exactly how different I feel. I think if I were to sum it up, I would say that I put myself through a lot of bullshit last year. And I think this year I'm a little bit more like, you know, I'm not going to do that to myself anymore.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to put myself through that. I'm going to stand up for myself. Like, I'm going to own stuff more. You know, like we were just talking about with like friends and everything, I'm going to call people out when they're doing shit that I don't appreciate. Yeah.
I'm actually honestly in the same boat because there were people that told me in the past year, because there's the things that I listed, especially with Kate and I separating and all that, there's other things that have come up where people are like, hey, you know, we didn't realize this was an issue. You should have spoken up about it. And it was one of those things where I'm like, well, I thought I did. Apparently I didn't do a great enough job about it.
Yeah.
I also argue that people are saying that stuff is they're only trying to cover their asses, but I digress. So I've been trying to be a lot more open about stuff because, you know, if you, it's letting that stuff bottle up inside you, right?
Yeah, it's not healthy. It's like poisonous. It feels like you're being poisoned by keeping it in.
Yeah, and it for me, it's just the fear of what will the person that I have to address if there's an issue where previously, you know, because for me, like when things get addressed, finally, it's too late because it's like I'm treating it as if it's been something that's been spoken of already, and the way I'm handling it is not great, and people are like, hey, this is the first we're hearing of it. So now, you know, I try to look past that fear of how is this person going to react. For me, it's, hey, I need to say this because if I don't say it, I'm just going to be bottling it up. I'm going to be in a bad mood, and then the issue will continue to go on. So, you run the risk of the issue continuing to go on. If it continues to go on, then that's, you know, at that point, it's the other end's problem to rectify.
Yeah. Because
they clearly haven't learned anything. But that is something that in the last year I've tried to get better about doing, is just speaking up when I'm not in a great state, or if I'm not feeling right, or if, you know, someone's pissing me off, just speaking up about it. Because otherwise I sit back and Ack and I joked about this a few episodes ago, but like arguing with yourself in the shower, then I have those moments where I start playing out arguments and debates in my head that never happened.
Yeah, same.
Or would never happen. So
the what if.
Right.
Yeah. The anxiety of that. That's always a fun time.
So I have not changed like my medication. I don't know if I've really changed too much in terms of like what I'm doing to keep my stuff in check. I don't know if I've really gotten any better. I've stayed on the medication I'm taking, venlafaxine. I take that nightly. I never miss a dose. There's definitely been some moments, even recently, where things come up that set me off, but I'm trying to like, I try to stop myself. I actually feel that going away for 2 weeks, like this vacation I just took recently, that helped.
Yeah.
And
that's a good stress relief.
I was in a Zoom meeting where people literally just started, and this happened like a couple of weeks ago, people just started screaming at each other. They got pissed off in this fight, like literally like I worry that if this happened in person, that fisticuffs would have been thrown.
What's the word for that? Like short fused or something like that? Like Because I felt that way too, where I was just like, I could easily be set off.
Yeah.
And that was like extraordinary because I usually am non-confrontational. I just feel like a different person. And I know that sounds kind of cliche, but it's like when you get put through shit like this, it does make you sit down and think. And especially since we've all been isolated, I had a lot of time with myself. I got to understand me more, which is really weird. But like when you're constantly, for me personally, I don't know if I'm just fucking weird, but I try to adapt when I'm around people to like be a little bit more digestible to them. The fucking terrible use of words, but
Sure.
like, you know, like try to flow more with them, try to be a little bit more something that they can understand and not really be like me.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, like if you've ever been around like somebody who is like really like a jock and like really into sports and like you're not really into sports, but you're like, yeah,
Oh, I've definitely been there.
you like, you know, you talk about like sports stuff.
Back at the radio station, I worked with a guy in promotions who, like, all this dude, he ate, breathed, lived sports.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he was an athlete. It's just that's all he cared about, and he wouldn't talk to you unless it was about sports. And I never had conversations with this guy because, like, he didn't care about if you were interested in anything that wasn't athletic. He had no time for you.
Yeah. So you kind of have to sometimes put a show on for people, and I feel so weird and so like shitty saying all this outside or out loud, but like it's true.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of people do that. Is they put on a show for people, and they're not really true to themselves. And I think me personally, I'm a people pleaser. And I never like the idea of letting people down or making people, you know, A, B, C, whatever you want to say. I never liked putting people through that. But as a result, I never really got to know myself.
Mm-hmm.
And being by myself for this pandemic, I really got to understand like where I'm at. And it was like really interesting. And I found out a lot of things. I found out that OCD, which is something I wouldn't have figured out if I didn't just spend time with myself.
I think I am OCD. That's something I need to talk to my doctor about and actually get like OCD and like the ADD diagnosed and make it official.
Yeah.
I honestly, I think that like taking venlafaxine helped with potentially having ADD.
Yeah.
I think it really helped. It helped with my focus. No pun intended. Like literally, I felt like ever since I started taking it, I think I've described it this way before. I'll say it again. It literally felt like, for the longest time, I felt like I was just in a haze, and I was constantly just like walking around in a fog and just didn't realize it. And then I started taking, I started taking these pills, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm seeing clear skies for the first time. Like I can think.
Yeah.
I don't have a million thoughts going in my head.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have you still have things that happen. Like you still have like anxiety or depression about certain things, but it's not everything.
Yeah.
That's the best part.
I 100% agree. It's so nice to not just be living in a constant state of worry, because that's where I was.
Yeah, same.
What I was saying earlier, being in a Zoom meeting where I actually saw this all like virtual fight break out, I just left because like if I stayed, I don't know what I would have witnessed, and that would have just like that whole thing just soured me to begin with. See it happen, but like in hindsight, I'm happy I stepped away from it, and I got messages afterwards, and I was just open about it. I'm just like, yeah, I left because I was uncomfortable, and I told those people, I'm like, hey, you made me uncomfortable, and that was incredibly unprofessional. That was really bad.
Yeah.
And part of me thinks like, hey, if this were a year ago, would I have had these stones to say it? So that's another thing I learned over the past years. Just don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
So
Speaking of, let me throw this to you. This
Okay.
might be something that you cut out because it might be weird.
Okay.
But how do you feel about people that are friends with people who are not good? Like, so for context, I'll just use like, I have friends who are friends with somebody who is racist, homophobic, transphobic, and just not a good person. And they're still okay with being friends with that person. What do you make of that? Like, what am I supposed to feel about my friends who are still friends with them? Like,
that's tough, man.
because obviously I can cut the bridge with the person who's a piece of shit.
Right.
That's easy. I'm like, you suck. I'm fucking done with you. Fuck you. But the people I'm still friends with that are like still friends with them, it's like,
That's really
tough.
yeah.
Especially if that particular person who's racist and homophobic and transphobic is completely against everything that you stand for. Because then it makes you feel like, well, they're still friends. They're still letting that pass, and that's somebody that hates me. Like,
I'm in that. I'm in a certain. I'm in a similar scenario with certain people, and it is, it's like I have friends who are friends with these types of people, and those types of people I'm not friends with.
yeah,
And I say to my friends, I say to them, that's entirely your decision, but it's also your grave to dig. You know, because eventually I just, because I'm a big believer in karma, right? And I just, and in the past, there's been a lot of scenarios in the past where I've just like sat back and watched things happen to people who, I'm just going to say, who've wronged me.
yeah,
I've eventually seen karma catch up to them because I sat back and I didn't do anything. I didn't retaliate. I didn't make it worse for myself because I knew that would make the situation better. And then it in some cases it would take a long time, but then karma would eventually catch up to them, and they would get hit with the karma train because of their shit ways, and or that shit would catch up with them. So
yeah,
so I just say to my friends who are associated with those negative types, look, you can do what you want, but like you will eventually see, it will come out. I don't know how long it's going to take, but it will come out that you will see how those people truly are.
Yeah.
And I, at the same time, I live by that whole saying, you can be friends with someone and still disagree with them.
Yeah, I'm glad I was going to touch up on that.
Yeah.
Because it was, I feel that completely. I'm not saying like, if you don't, if you support so-and-so and somebody else supports so-and-so, then you should just say, burn that bridge.
Right.
Like, no, having different perspectives are important. And I know a lot of people feel like, if I cut people out who have a different perspective than me, then I would be cutting ties with everyone.
Right.
But I think there's a difference between cutting ties with perspectives and morals. And I think it's not helpful for you to keep people around you who have different morals. And there's a big difference. And I know it's hard because you're friends with some people for a very long time. And you're like, I don't want to say goodbye to them, but there's nothing that I get from them anymore.
Right.
Like, they are very toxic. So I need to burn that bridge.
I've done that too, especially in the last year. Just finally, because going through the shit that I've been going through, the last thing I needed was, and that's just from, on a personal level, the stuff I've been going through. And then obviously at a more global level with the pandemic and everything, separating toxic people out of my life. Cause that was the last thing I needed. And it it was a weight off my shoulders, but then there was then sadly residual effects that followed with that became their own separate problems I had to deal with. But ultimately, cutting off that cancer, I guess.
Yeah.
It's
That's a good way of putting it.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's like cancer. You go through that. I can't speak from my own experience with this, but like, yeah, to get rid of cancer is sometimes, you got to get sick to get better, right?
Yeah.
You got to go through chemotherapy, and that shit sucks. But and then
At the end,
in the end, you'll be fine, or you won't be sick anymore.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I'm trying to make an analogy, and like it makes sense in my head, and trying to articulate it. I don't know how it's coming out.
I'm just trying not to make a joke.
Hey guys, cancer.
No, it's like you'll either be fine or dead, which is also fine. If we're being realistic, you don't have to pay bills.
You don't have to go to work
You
anymore.
don't have any stress.
I say that all the time. I'm like, hey, if I die, then I don't have to go to work anymore. So,
Yeah. I don't have to worry about shit.
yeah.
But yeah, I completely agree.
We were at work, we were talking about a contractor that we worked with briefly who I had no problem with. And I keep in touch with the guy. He was very nice, no issues with him. And then the person I was talking with pointed out, like, yeah, we were doing a Zoom meeting and he had his screen share up and I saw his browser and I saw his bookmarks and they were all for like Newsmax and One American News, all the pro-Trump, the conservative, Republican sources. And that was it was like a half shock to hear because the guy was also based out of Florida. But I heard that and I'm like, but you know what? I'm hearing this for the first time. I didn't know that until now. And that guy doesn't talk about it. He never talked about it when we were working. He doesn't talk about it on social media. If that's his thing, he keeps it to himself.
Yeah.
And that's what I appreciate because there are too many people right now that I respect highly that I'm having trouble continuing to respect because of their beliefs, because they're just like, they're assholes about it. They're jerks. And it sours me to see that stuff. And like on Facebook, on social media, I didn't unfriend them. I just unfollowed them. Like, I can't see this anymore.
That's what I did.
I can't see this anymore because I don't need to be put in a bad mood, not just because of what you're posting and what you're sharing and what your outrageous beliefs are, but just all of a sudden having the fact and the notion and the image in my head that you're this kind of person. I don't want to think that. I want to think, about the person that I've known this whole time. Like, keep that shit to yourself.
It gets so complicated too, especially with like different political views. That got so challenging this past year because you start to think like, after all the things Mr. Cheeto fuckhead did, you
are fake news.
You start to question your friends who support him. You're like, well, he's done things that are racist. He's done things that are very hurtful to a lot of different types of people. And yet you still support him. It's still, in a way, it sort of feels like you are also taking on those racist traits.
Yeah.
But there's a difference, and it's so complicated that I haven't figured it out yet. Like, just because, you follow and support Trump doesn't mean you're all of the things that Trump is, the same way that I voted for Biden.
Right.
I don't agree with a lot of the things Biden is doing. Doesn't mean I'm everything that Biden is.
I just like having a human in charge.
Yeah,
a sympathetic human in charge because that has been sorely missed.
Yeah.
And
not being angry every fucking press conference and just being like,
being a narcissist.
You're an asshole.
I learned a lot about narcissism in the last year. Being around, I've cut out of my life toxic, narcissistic people, and those people they make me sick. Those are the worst kinds of people, and it was brought on in part by our leader, who is a narcissist, who continues to try to take credit for things that he didn't have any involvement with, trying to forget that he was downplaying COVID. When it was very clearly a problem. It's just nice to see someone now who understands the gravity of not only the issues around them, but the gravity of what they say publicly and how people will interpret that.
Yeah.
It's just now we're in such a changed, more divided landscape now since Trump came and went, and his presidency, and especially the last few months of 2020, really brought out the worst in people.
It really did. And it was unreal, man. I was experiencing feelings that I had never felt before, like rage like never before.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just so unhealthy. It was scary.
Yeah.
It was so scary because I usually never feel that angry towards people.
Yeah.
But some of my friends were supporting him and saying he's great. Like, and it just made me like my blood boil. And that was scary because I'm not like that.
The day the insurrection happened, or the insurrection attempt happened, I remember signing off work early that day, and I just told my boss, I'm like, I can't focus on work anymore because of what's going on. She's just like, that's fine. Other people are doing the same thing. And I'm like, I'm just mad. I feel sick, and I'm just mad.
Yeah,
and
it does feel sick. It does feel like a sick.
Someone on Facebook, because I remember I posted something on Facebook about it, and someone like was trying to defend what was happening, and I just told that person, go fuck yourself. Literally stand in front of a moving vehicle, because my God, no sane person should be supporting this.
I agree. Like I had moments like that too. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah,
like somebody just saying like some stupid shit, and I don't know why, but I joined the battle, and I was like, I'm disappointed in you because you are spreading false information.
Well, that's with, trying to get better about my own mental health, especially in the last year. That's something else I learned is don't get involved with that stuff. If like, don't join the crowd.
You can't win.
Yeah. Don't get involved. Don't step into it. If it's not your battle, don't take part.
It's not based on logic.
Yeah.
It's based on feeling, and you can almost never change that.
You can't fix stupid.
You can't
you
fix
really
stupid.
can't fix stupid.
And I know I probably will. This is probably not the best thing to say, but I honestly feel like half of our country has some sort of issues mentally because they are immune to facts, and they are so down the rabbit hole of like things that aren't true. It just seems like they're unable to think for themselves.
Yeah.
It feels like a big portion of our country has some serious mental issues.
I mean, if Mike Gerard were here, he'd say, yeah, 70 million people have mental issues because 70 million people voted Republican in the election.
Yeah, and that's fair.
They still didn't win, but that just shows you, I mean, the fact that it wasn't a landslide, right? That just tells you how bad it is.
Yeah.
And how bad the last 4 years were to sway so many people in the wrong direction, controversially saying the wrong direction. But it's those, again, Florida. Look at Florida. Look at everyone in Florida and what they believe and how they've been living for the last year compared to the rest of the country, right?
Yeah.
So,
and a quick note that I want to say that I have spoken to friends about my situation, about the other friends, and I am completely aware that I am privileged to have that situation where friends of friends of friends of friends like don't define things, because when you're in a certain position where somebody is completely against who you are, you don't really get a choice.
right.
You don't get to choose. Like, you avoid people because you don't think those people are safe.
Yeah.
So I understand that I am very lucky and privileged as a white male to not to be able to put those differences aside. Like, before I could say like, oh yeah, I'm going to let your racism slip because, if I were to cut ties with people who say things I don't agree with, then I'd be cutting ties with everyone. Some people don't have that option. Some people have to cut out family members, have to cut out friends, because it is not safe to be around those types of people. So it's, I do realize that I'm privileged to be able to, and it's a very, you are privileged when you can say, well, I know that they're bad, but I'm going to just tolerate it.
And I know people who are like that. I have, with the people I know, where it's the friends of the friends situation, they're the people who will be like, I don't want to talk about this person because I'm still friends with them. And they, they don't want to hear me or others complain about them.
Yeah.
And then there's the other people who are friends with those people, but effectively behind their backs. And to me, they will be like, yeah, this person sucks. Like, I can understand why you dislike them. And they'll also, I've learned that the people who are like this, those toxic people especially, I'm at least not alone in my thinking.
Yeah.
So, something, I saw this recently, you can't change other people. You can only change yourself.
I like that.
So, and then I also saw another one that was like, stop trying to make other people like you because you don't like other people.
That's also a good one.
So, do you, to wrap this up, do you think that with, the world, at least from the standpoint of the pandemic, with things around us easing and getting better and everyone getting vaccinated and whatnot, do you think that is do you feel like that's having a positive effect on your mental health, or is it more of a wait and see scenario?
It's a good question, because if you asked me, like, after my first vax, I was like, I was worried about the world. I was worried about like what society was going to be like. Like, I had all sorts of different fears about like expectations, what to expect from society.
Yeah.
Because society is way different now. Like, people who have never experienced anxiety or depression experienced it in the past year.
Yeah, it skyrocketed. It really did.
So everybody's different. And there was this like crazy anxiety that, everybody's different. What is everything going to be like? Is this going to be this? What are the expectations?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say after getting the second dose, I kind of felt lighter. I don't know if you felt that way too, but I felt lighter.
Yeah. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulder, but mine only. It was a matter of what is the rest of the world, not even the rest of the world, but just like the people around me. What are they going to do? Now, seeing figures say that 50% of the state has been vaccinated, that's reassuring. That because there's far too many people out there who are, they're against the idea of getting vaccinated. I know people who say that, they won't get it unless their job mandates that they do it. Honestly, I really hope it gets to the point. That's why I said earlier about how I want to encourage everybody to get the vaccines, especially around these parts, because we're hitting a point where we'll have more than we need. Mm-hmm. It'll be like the flu shot, where if you're just at your doctor's and they offer you the COVID vaccine, just fucking take it, because it's right there. That's what I'm hoping. And I know a lot of people have said like they don't want to get the vaccine, have at least been like, well, maybe like, because initially I was open about it and saying like, I'm going to get it, but I didn't want to go through the song and dance of having to pre-register and then wait and all of that.
Horrible.
And then I got the opportunity and I took it. But otherwise, I was ready to just wait until like Walgreens or CVS had it available. Same. I mean, they're at that point now where I could do that, but I was of that mindset. I'm like, I'll get it, but there's other people out there that need it more than I do. I need it, but I can wait.
And I understand the anxiety about like the vaccine itself. I will admit I was anxious to get it, because I was like, there's a lot of what ifs that are involved with it. I understand it. So I get people who are scared that won't get it because they're scared, but they won't admit that they're scared.
Yeah.
And the best way to deal with that is just do the research. There's so many people that believe so many stupid things about the vaccine that it's just crazy. Like, people that are like, well, if the vaccine works, why are we still wearing masks? It's like, because you're not vaccinated.
Yeah.
And also, the masks don't protect me, they protect you.
Yeah.
And it's like, we are a year into this fucking thing. How do you not know that? It's ridiculous. Sorry,
Yeah.
Cooper. Cooper was curled up in a ball, and now he's like,
It's okay,
oh,
buddy.
there's energy in the room.
It's okay.
And like, I don't understand it because they don't do research, or they're in their little bubble and they're only finding things that reassure what they believe.
And they're the same ones too who say, you know, they'll make some outlandish claim and follow it up with, look it up, do your research. Whenever people say that to me, whenever someone who is very clearly, you know, an anti-vaxxer or a conspiracy theorist says something, offers no evidence or details or even any source, and they just say, look it up, I chew them out. I'm like, no, keep going, because you clearly know so much about it. I'm not going to look it up. I have the professor right here talking at me about it. So tell me about it.
I like that a lot.
And then they go silent. I'm like, yeah, there you go. That's what I expected. That's what I figured. You have no idea what you're talking about. And if you cite Alex Jones or one of the Trump sources, news sources, as your own source, you have no credibility whatsoever.
I agree. I really think that you should do your research, but not just the stuff that you want, like that reassures your ideas.
Yeah.
You should do research that questions everything. Like I did research on Trump supporters and Trump stuff, like to try to see what the Trump perspective was, like why people like Trump. And I understood it completely.
Did you find,
I didn't agree with it.
Did you find there was a high degree of mental illness associated with it?
It just feels that way, man.
I mean, it really is.
I'm not making a light of the situation. It just really feels like, you know, these people are childish in a way, and their minds are easily manipulated to certain things, and they're very stubborn.
Yeah. If it's not mental illness, it's like something has happened to them physically that is like resulted in brain damage or something.
Yeah.
Something has happened that has changed or has altered them, has affected their ability to think even somewhat rationally. Because the people who have surprised me as being the ardent Trump supporters, or the ardent Republicans, or the conspiracy theorists, the anti-vaxxers, also have some physical ailment about them that only came about recently that I seriously think clouds their judgment.
Yeah, I was just talking to my cousin about that. There's like so many people who are, and I want to make this clear that I am not trying to make like some sort of joke. I'm not trying to make light of this. There are literally people who have brain damage.
Yeah.
That after they became brain damage, they became Trump supporters.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. My uncle, my late uncle, he passed away at the end of 2019. Thankfully, he didn't have to live through what we're going through now. We've actually jokingly said, how do you think he would have done, had he lived to see COVID? And then we all kind of laugh, and then the subject changes. But, and I'll preface this by saying I love the man, and it really, really, really fucking affected me when he died, even though I knew it was coming. But he was an alcoholic. He smoked a pack a day. He had very aggressive cancer. In the end, he was a blue collar guy. I really don't want to paint him as like, the sort of the typical Republican, because he was the guy at the dinner table at Thanksgiving that would start talking about politics start talking about how much Obama sucks and, you know, all of that, and everyone else just roll their eyes and just let him do his thing. But I seriously do think that's just his vices. Those affected him.
Mhm.
You know, if you drink your ass off. I mean, he stopped drinking at one point because he did, you know, it was affecting him. But you know, that stuff screws you up, and it screws up your line of thinking. And
It
then
does.
and then getting as sick as he was because his vices caught up to him, that affects you too. I mean, it could have also been he could have been that way his whole life. I don't know. I'm just speaking from when I became aware enough of that stuff, like around the time I turned, like, I don't know, my early 20s, when I finally started paying attention to that stuff at the dinner table and engaging myself in these conversations and realizing what that line of thinking was, and not knowing, like, okay, has it always been this way? Even if it always was that way, 2016, you know, it just that's what kicked it into gear. That was the gasoline on the fire. But I sincerely believe that the drinking, the smoking, the illnesses that were related to both of those played a role in that line of thinking. It's like a defense. It's an inherent defense mechanism that you have that you lose control over if you are affected by any of those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like me not being able to pay attention to give in to what people believe and say about Trump or the pandemic or the vaccines, all of that stuff. There's a inherent defense mechanism that is up that enables me to not pay attention to that stuff. One might argue it's called having an IQ that's not in the double digits, but if you are, you know, physically or mentally affected by something, you don't have that inherent defense, and you will just, if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, believe this thing," they'll believe it. Nothing will stop them from believing it.
And that ties in with anxiety a lot too.
Yeah.
So not necessarily saying that these people who support this are brain dead or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
They could just be scared.
I really hope someone's listening to it, and it's just like brainwashing. What you're saying is brainwashing.
Well, I mean, I honestly think there's a big portion of them that are scared.
Yeah.
And that's so, because I mean, I have anxiety. There's lots of things I have anxiety about that are not rational. And I get it. I understand it's not rational thinking. It's fine. Like, I get it. But it doesn't mean it's correct.
Did you ever see, I've brought this movie up before on the show, Higher Learning.
Sounds familiar. Probably because you brought it up on the show.
It's a John Singleton movie, and it's got Lawrence Fishburne, Ice Cube. It's a very good movie. I think Janet Jackson's in it too. But Michael Rappaport, who you might know is a crazy white man, he plays a troubled youth who effectively, I mean, he's got a lot of issues, and someone approaches him at night one night and was like, "Hey, come meet my friends. Like, you look like you could use some help." And turns out that the guy he was talking to is a skinhead, and his friends are neo-Nazis. And Michael Rappaport ends up becoming a neo-Nazi because he was like, "Hey, I'm lost. I need something to turn to."
Oh.
And then he became a neo-Nazi. I mean, yeah, it's brainwashing. That's what happens, how people get, you know, fall in with cults and everything. Even like Scientology, if I may be so extreme. But you can even say the same thing about religion.
Yeah.
When people
fear.
are like, turn to Jesus, and they're like, "I found God. Jesus saved me." I'm like, all right, I'm speaking to someone who's, you know, a full-blown, I'm not an atheist, I'm an agnostic. I'll believe it when I see it. But that's cult-like behavior when people are like, "I saw the light, now I believe in God." Like, did you? Did you really?
Yeah, I think they use fear in religion a lot.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Like, it is mostly revolves around fear. You're afraid of certain things. You're afraid of the afterlife, like whether there is or not one. You're afraid of hell, damnation, whatever you want. You're afraid that if you don't follow this book, you're fucked.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
I
respect my father. I do, but
I respect beliefs.
Yeah, he's very much into Jesus, and in the past trying to get me to sway that direction, and he knew he wasn't succeeding.
Yeah.
And ultimately he didn't succeed because I still don't believe in it, but
you can believe whatever you want.
Right.
And that's fine, but don't, because some book says you can't be, like, two men can't be together, or two women can't be together.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you can't get an abortion if you need one. Like, if your life is in danger, or, you know, things have happened to you that makes you need certain surgeries.
Yeah.
Like that, don't get in the way of other people living. Live your life.
Yeah.
But don't say because it's not right for you, don't say that it's wrong for them.
Yeah. I respect whatever people believe in. I do. I wholly respect that. I have nothing against anyone who believes in whatever deity, whatever God. If they're Catholic or Buddhist or whatever, I respect that 100%. But I will be vocal if someone is trying to cram it down my throat and force me to believe in something that I'm not going to believe in. I remember doing a radio station event, and I was talking with, I think he was like the bus driver for one of the bands that was playing, and this was at the, you know, Xfinity Center, whatever the hell it's called now. And, you know, we were having a nice conversation until the end when he goes, and he straight up says to me, you look like you need some help. I'm like, what? And then he gives me a booklet.
Oh, God.
About, like, you know.
No pun intended.
Yeah, find Jesus, or one of those booklets. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I gotta go. Because I was like, dude, no, you just killed the vibe, man.
Yeah.
Don't recruit me. Don't do that shit.
And yeah.
Cool. Like, yeah, thank you, but I will decide on my own what I want to believe in. Like, I have no disrespect for this guy believing in Jesus, and he can do that. That's his choice, but don't get me involved. I don't want to. I mean, this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about people, you know, being friends with the wrong type. And when they say to me, don't get me involved. Don't talk to me about why you don't like this person, because I'm still friends with them, they say. I mean, I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
But
when they're against things that you are, it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right.
Yep.
Holy shit, that was great.
Yeah.
And
therapeutic,
and even better that we could do it in person.
Yeah.
God damn.